you're looking at is frosh convocation at Stanford University, a campus tradition where all the incoming freshmen gather in the main quad and are introduced to this lovely university for the first time.
And what you're also looking at is a photo of two black men, the president and the vice president of the student body, two seniors in this photo who are introducing the body of incoming freshmen to the Stanford family. Let's be honest. How many stereotypes is this photo right here breaking?
Just this photo alone, you can count them on your finger, right? But one of the things that we've discovered in our time as student body president and vice president is that everywhere we go, people seem to want to throw a label at us. Anytime a black person opens their mouth, you're automatically labeled an activist. And Cambridge defines activist as a person who believes strongly in political or social change and takes part in activities such as public protests to try to make this happen.
And so we were cast for a role that was not necessarily made for us. Oftentimes, the role of campus leadership is kind of like a pageant. You smile, you look pretty. I mean, I know we have the looks, okay. But we also back that up with our voice. We like to speak out, and so we're really filling shoes in our own way.
That brings up the question, are we activists? When we get into this role and we're elected to lead on behalf of the student body, does that make us an activist by virtue of our identity? We can't be in a room and hear something that we're passionate about and not speak out and not use our voice. But does that make us activists?
And an even bigger question is, how do we, as with an activist mindset, in a role of institutional leadership at a massive institution, make change?
We want to know, how do we get to this point? This is President Barack Obama marching in front of the 50th anniversary of the Selma to Montgomery marches. And the significance of this photo is twofold. First, you have the first African-American president leading a march reminiscent of the civil rights movement.
And then what you have is legendary activists coming together to hold hands with a president who is actually at the helm of the establishment, the very establishment that these marchers were raging against at one time, here to commemorate one of the most important and significant moments in American history, the 1965 Voting Rights Act.
We want to be like that.
And that's the thing. Every moment on stage as a leader is a live performance.
They don't call it political theater for nothing. So we're out here trying to figure out, how do we get there?
And as a way to do that, we want to tell you 3 stories to show you how. Act 1. Picture Ferguson, Missouri. Michael Brown, shot dead in cold blood in the streets, civil unrest and racial strife. No matter what you think about this, or no matter if you agree or whether you don't, this moment sent a message to African Americans across the country.
That moment bled into the University of Missouri, which is not far from Ferguson. Students at the University of Missouri were directly involved in the protests in Ferguson, and the racial strife that was occurring in the community and the questioning of identity and whether we're welcome at institutions that were not built for us. This question became center stage at the University of Missouri.
There were acts of violence against black students who were feeling under attack. There was cotton balls thrown on the Black Student Center lawn. There was threats made on anonymous social media platforms saying, black students, if you come outside your dorms, we will kill you. And so a group of students, activists and student leaders, and the football team got together to ask their president to make a change. And at the helm of this were 2 of our close friends.
Peyton Head and Brenda Smith Lizama were the student body president and vice president at the University of Missouri, and like us, they were both black. Now here we are at the White House with other student body presidents who are black across the country, and once again, all the stereotypes that this photo alone is busting up. This makes me so excited to look at every time I see it.
Right. You can applause if you want. It's good. But we were getting live messages, live updates from these 2 about what was actually going on the ground, how they were feeling unsafe and under attack. But meanwhile, the national news was spinning a different story.
I remember do you remember? We were sitting in the dining hall, and we were getting the updates on our phone, but also looking up at the news. And on TV, we saw Fox News, and the headline,
"Free speech under fire on campus." So we're scratching our heads like.
And we paused and thought, whose free speech are you talking about, Megyn Kelly? Because we know it's not ours.
No. I mean, it was almost like they had the story upside down. The people who were under attack were painted out to be the perpetrators, but the people who are actually doing the attacking, using their words to victimize and to brutalize, with this narrative going on nationally, were actually made out to be the victims. So we said, we can't let this happen.
We got to do something about this. And so we sent a message, a statement to every single student on campus, contextualizing the events at the University of Missouri, putting them in their proper racial context and talking about how the University of Missouri had become unsafe for black students. And this was a very, very serious threat. And it extended to our own campus as well.
As a result, we sent out a statement to every single student on campus, and eventually thousands of students gathered for a show of solidarity for the university. And our entire campus stood firm in a real understanding of what was going on. And so we realized that you don't have to ingest the narrative the way it's fed to you. You can actually change the show
by changing the script. And that's our first lesson. Act 2. When you're trying to make change on an issue where your identity is not central, that becomes a much more difficult task. Brandon and I are both black. We can be up here and talk about racism all day long because we face it every single day. But no issue has been more salient or troubling on college campuses across the country than the issue of sexual violence.
But John and I are two straight, cisgendered black men. How can we could positively add our voice as allies to an issue where our identity is not necessarily central? Particularly, how do you be a good ally? We know that we have a big platform, and so we want to use it to make a difference on this issue on this campus.
We decided one of the ways we could contribute was putting together a town hall meeting where we brought together the provost of the university, all the relevant university administrators who'd been working so hard on this issue, but then we gave the opportunity for survivors, for allies, for women and survivors of all genders to come and speak their truth, to tell their story in this particular moment, in this particular platform. All we did at this event was introduce and pass the mic around to people so that they could tell their stories about why this was so impactful.
Absolutely. It was really empowering the people who were central to the cause. So we used our privilege and we used our platform to build a stage.
But pass the mic.
And that brings us to our third and final act. How do you make a difference and build consensus around a very controversial issue, especially when there's so many different interests and perspectives to represent? You know, there's a joke, when you talk to 5 people, you'll get 7 different opinions. And that's even worse at Stanford, where everybody has something to say. Honestly, it only takes 5 people to put their 2 cents in to get $1, and so we had a lot of work to do.
Now, a few Native American students who we're close friends with approached us talking about trauma that they experienced living on this campus, meaning that on this campus, Father Junipero Serra is honored more than just about any other individual other than Leland Stanford and his wife Jane. And so I'm very familiar with Father Serra because I'm from San Diego. And in California, we learn all about the mission system. I built my little mission in 3rd grade, and it's my largest academic achievement to date. And I knew all about the history, but I knew a positive history of Father Junipero Serra.
And there's another history that we actually need to look at. Father Serra is often painted as a benevolent man. He brought Christianity to California, the west coast of the United States. But on the other hand, the mission system has actually contributed to the brutalization and the decimation of the native population of California. He forced natives to convert to Christianity. Spanish soldiers actually raped native women, and their labor was used in the creation of the very mission system that brought their people to their knees. And why is he so relevant to Stanford? Because at Stanford, we have 4 different properties
We have a dorm named
Serra.
after Father Serra.
We have a building that houses the Clayman Institute for Gender Research. We're not quite sure that Father Serra would have supported gender research, but we have that.
We have Sarah Street, and then the official university address is at 450 Sarah Mall. And we thought, wow, how did this guy get to be so important to this particular university? And is there maybe another history that we're not celebrating and talking about, specific to this campus and this land that we're sitting on?
Especially, Stanford has a matchless commitment to diversity and inclusion. Maybe we could change these building names to be more representative of that, putting up Native American heroes, using words in Native American traditional languages to better reflect our university's commitment to all peoples. And that was, thank you.
Yeah, you can applaud.
We got 2 applauses. I feel like we're doing pretty good. That was our mission. So we had to talk to countless people across this university. We had to speak to students. We had to speak to faculty. We had to speak to lower level administrators and upper level administrators.
And let me tell you, when we're talking to students who we're familiar with, we use one set of language. When we walk into a room of faculty and it's just a sea of white hair,
and we don't have no white hair.
That's not us.
We have to use a different language for each individual. When we're talking to the faculty, we emphasize learning outcomes and how this is a learning opportunity. And we quote Jane Stanford. But when we're talking to students, we can be more direct. But we have a single message, but in different tones.
Now, we're both jazz players. I play the saxophone and Brandon plays the piano, and we jam together all the time. That's one of the ways we like to spend our free time. But when you're playing jazz, the most important thing is that every single instrument is in a different key. And you're putting together different instruments, different keys, different sounds to put together one melody and one sound.
Absolutely. And that's what we did. In the end, we got the entire campus behind this idea. And after about a month of grassroots organizing, but also using our position of institutional leadership, we got the president of the university to create the first ever committee on investigating Stanford's history and naming practices in the history of this university.
The lesson here is that you need to always sing your song,
but in the key of your audience.
That insightful. You can change the show
by changing the script. You build a stage,
but you pass the mic. And sing your song,
but in the key of your audience.
What you're looking at is 2 black men who weren't supposed to be here, who were never supposed to be on that stage, but people have made it possible for us. And in that vein, we figured out how we can try and make a difference with what we're given.
When the curtains pull back and you're on stage and the spotlight of leadership is on you, we hope you will put on a show for everybody to remember. Thank you very much.